Now that Paula already tackled an in-depth discussion of what really is popular culture, we will now go to the ideologies in the Philippine culture and how it transformed from way back during the Spanish era and up to the present moment. Hello, mabuhay, and welcome. Have you ever wondered why things are the way they are here in the Philippines? Why do certain traditions stick around? And why some pop culture trends explode overnight? Today, we are diving deep into that, guided by Guillermo's groundbreaking piece, Philippine Culture, Ideology, and Transformation. Today, let's take a journey through time and ask, how does culture shape us? Who shapes culture? You see, culture is never neutral. According to Guillermo, culture always reflects power struggles. It can either maintain an unfair system or help the people fight back and transform society. So, in the next minutes, we'll explore how culture in the Philippines evolved across the four moments: feudal times, colonial rule, dictatorship, and the rise of people's culture. And along the way, I'll ask you to reflect, imagine, and even connect it to the issues we face and we see today. Let's start with the feudal era, the time of Spanish rule. But first, what is an encomienda? The encomienda system was a way the Spanish crown rewarded officials. They give them the right to collect tribute and labor from the Filipinos exchange for their so-called protection and Christianization. In reality, this system became legalized exploitation. Imagine being farmer in the 700s. You till the land, but the land is not yours. Instead, it belongs to the encomienderos or the friar estates. Culture during this period was dominated by the religions, fiestas, prayers, devotion to Christ and Mary. But the key here is these cultural practices weren't just innocent traditions. They helped to preserve the power of the landlords and the church. Culture kept people loyal, vigilant, and afraid to rebel. And even up today, how many farmers still don't own the land they farm? The land reform struggles like Hacienda Luisita remind us that feudal culture didn't just disappear. It shapes inequalities here in the Philippines. So what really the lesson of this is that culture can be used to maintain power by making inequality seems normal. Next, the colonial era under Americans. They introduced school, Hollywood movie, and English language. Sounds modern, right? But Guillermo reminds us that this was also a way to control. Education was designed to make Filipinos admire America, not to question colonial rule. Hollywood showed us heroes that didn't look like us, teaching us that progress was white, Western, and modern. The Spanish introduced Catholicism, but Filipinos syncretized it with indigenous beliefs, creating folk Catholicism. The Virgin Mary associated with the local goddesses like Lakapati, and rituals like anting-anting or the amulets persisted despite the church disapproval. This syncretism was a form of quiet resistance, persevering elements of indigenous culture while outwardly adopting the religion. The ilustrados or the educated Filipinos use art and literature to fight for reforms. For example, Dr. Jose Rizal's No Limitang Here exposed the abuses of the colonial regime, sparking a national consciousness. But even in their reformist agenda was limited by their privileged positions since they often advocate for assimilation rather than radical change. And here's the impact. Because even today, colonial mentality survives in how we value imported brands and how many still see working abroad and studying abroad as an ultimate dream. Colonial ideology shape our desires and self-image. and the traces of it are still visible in our society. Fast forward to the dictatorship of Ferdinand Marcos. The 1970s weren't just about the martial law, about the curfews, or about the arrest. It was also about the battle of culture. On one hand, Marcos projected the image of Bagong Lipunan or the New Society. Remember those cultural shows? The cultural center of the Philippines was built to display a world-class Filipino culture. But this was the culture for the elite, shiny on the outside while the ordinary Filipinos suffered censorship, poverty, and human rights violations. Daily life was marked by fear. Journalists silenced, activists tortured, workers and farmers are exploited. The families of desaparecidos or the disappeared never found justice. And yet, despite the pain, people fought back. Underground movements created songs, poems, and theater that spoke of resistance, like protest art, political graffiti, and street plays. So when you hear the protests chant today like, that is not just a noise. It is a culture in action, a people's culture born from struggle. And doesn't it feel like deja vu? Today, we are again under a Marcos presidency. Different time, different phase, but the same question remain. Whose culture dominates? Whose stories are being silenced? And how do the people resist? Now, here's the turning point. The rise of people's culture. Guillermo highlights how oppressed groups like workers, farmers, students created their own cultural forms to resist and to dream of change. This is where the culture transforms society. Street theaters, protest murals, folk songs, they became weapons against dictatorship. Instead of culture being a tool of rulers, it became a tool of the people. Groups like Gabriela Women's Organization used theater and song to raise awareness about human rights abuses and gender inequality. Underground newspapers like Pahayag provided alternative news and analysis countering regime's propaganda. Even today, think about it. How artists, youth, uses TikTok, rap battles, spoken word poetry, and even memes to raise awareness and to be aware of the issues like red tagging, climate change, and the labor rights. That's the people culture continuing to evolve. So, what is Guillermo's main point? Culture is never neutral. It always reflects people's struggles, power struggles, and social change. Whether it is a culture of the elite, culture of resistance, or the culture of consumerism, it is always shaped by ideology. Culture is a site of concentration where different groups vie for influence and control. The encomienda system may be gone, but the farmers still face landlessness and exploitation, trapped in the cycles of death and poverty. The overseas Filipino workers are celebrated as heroes, but their struggles often go unacknowledged. They endured homesickness, discrimination, and even abuse abroad. Modern struggles tied to our colonial and economic history. And here's my word of wisdom to leave with you. We are not just a passive consumers of culture. We are active participants. We can challenge dominant narratives, create our own stories, and shape a more just and equitable society. So I ask you, what kind of culture will we create? A culture of blind obedience or a culture of transformation? The choice is ours. and the future is in the hands of those who dare to question, resist, and imagine a better Philippines. Thank you.